Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins. I'm Trevor Hankins.
and you're on the air with Power Squared. Tonight we have a special guest, Patrick Horvath.
Horvath.
Horvath, sorry. I mess up everybody's name, including my own, who's on here. We appreciate you being on the show. Sorry about mispronouncing your name.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. For those who don't know who you are, like me, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I, Patrick Horvath. I'm the currently the writer and artist behind Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which comes out from IDW Comics, and we currently have one book out now, and I'm currently working on the second book, which will be coming out issue one of that on July 9th. So very soon. And I'm relatively new to the comic scene, and I have a whole other life before where I worked in film and television and a bunch of different jobs, but uh, not to. I mean, like a lot of it was mostly about writing and directing independent horror movies. Um, and then all sorts of other odd jobs and stuff, camera department stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
But essentially, like that's pretty much my background.
We figured it was kind of, Friday the 13th was a good day to have you on.
Oh man, no lie, Friday the 13th have the majority of them been pretty good luck for me.
Well, hopefully this will be good luck for you as well. So you talked about your work in film. Did you go to film school?
I most certainly did. Yeah, I went to the film program at the University of Iowa in Iowa City.
Okay. Now, is that big on production or is that?
No.
Okay.
So essentially, it is. Listen, I love that film program, but the it was not like in that area in the Midwest. You're probably if you really want to get one of the best educations in like hands-on experience and to also get placement professionally, like you'll probably go to Columbia in Chicago. And so University of Iowa's film program it had equipment, like we would make movies. And of course, this is like the 90s going in the early 2000s. So this is like we were doing film. We
Right.
all shot on film. And it was basically like heavy theory, like tons of theory stuff.
Right.
And so, and a lot of like critical like seminar classes and stuff like that, where you really would dissect these films. We watched tons of movies, and you would be identifying themes and like how sort of different, looking at films through different lenses,
Yeah.
and then when you made stuff, you would have to like defend like your choices. Like, why did you decide to do this? You know what I mean? Not like, oh, I just wanted to make this look like, the opening sequence from some other film or
Right.
whatever. Instead, it was like, I made this thing, but like it's talking about this and it's, dealing with these
Yes,
themes
yes,
and like,
yes.
and so it's a lot more cerebral in terms of that, or sort of, I guess, kind of intellectual. But I mean, like, there are also like we also just love, movies,
Right.
like all sorts, like not just like, sort of art house or anything.
Yeah.
But that was I think. So the thing of it is that like we had equipment and they would teach you how to use everything, which is great. But then they were very hands off after that.
Right.
So it was very DIY. Like we all would wear multiple hats, and you'd be like shooting it, lighting it yourself, and your buddy's doing the sound, and and like a couple friends are acting in it for this day or whatever, and like you would pull together these shorts. And so and then you would also like we'd turn around and edit it on like a flatbed moviola, and then you'd make your AB composite with the negative, and you'd send it off and hope the sound matched up to it when you got it back, and all that stuff. So like. It was very obviously like technical, but it's funny because it very much instilled a like if you want to make something, just go do it,
Right.
sort of mentality, instead of like waiting for the right moment or like waiting until you had enough resources or whatever. And so and I feel like that has served me through my entire adult life, including comics, but also in the films that I've made
Right.
and in other artistic projects.
I went to USC in their critical studies program.
Oh, cool.
Worked on a PhD, which I'm not Dr. Hankins, but I did all the classwork for it.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that was I wasn't going to get the degree is I didn't want to teach.
Sure.
I didn't come to LA and honestly, to go to Iowa to teach film, critical studies was not my goal in life.
Right.
And when I told them that, they were not pleased with my, I said it was sort of like having been in prison all your life and the only job you can get outside of prison is being a guard.
Yeah.
And they did not like that analogy at all. So they did not give me a PhD, but I did do a lot of critical studies, and I came from a more of a somewhat production background into this program, and I wasn't enamored with reading films. How would Lacan have read this or whatever? It's just,
Sure.
And everything is wrong, and we're doing it over, and blah,
Right.
It wasn't, but I totally understand that Iowa would be more in the critical studies.
For sure.
Yeah, they wanted you to be able to make a movie, which I had already done. I went to North Texas State before, and then Texas, cool. And then there. So anyway, we looked at your IMDb.
Oh sure, yeah.
Entry. So you also worked as a lighting technician. What is that exactly?
I mean, it's basically like I don't know what the credit, which title that was for, but I mean, like it was basically probably like a gaffer on some project.
Okay.
And you're just like you're I mean, it's most of that stuff. I mean, they have to give you something for a credit. But, like a lot of that stuff is like, I was probably like gaffer grip. So like I was basically like setting up lighting, rigging it, and then like plugging it in, making sure it didn't blow circuits, and giving the DP whatever they needed for the light for that shot. And it's funny because like small projects, like again, we're all just like friends out here in LA making a movie, right? Making a short. Or making like a low budget feature or whatever. And there would be like, these moments where you also find yourself working in reality show stuff, which I did for like at least 5 years. And a lot of that was non-union, which is harder to find non-union reality now, but like early 2000s, like nobody was union. Yeah. And so like, and that was like their big deal. They were trying to, especially around 2007 when the strikes were happening, they were like, we're rocking and rolling here in the non-union world of reality shows. And so you would like, I was assistant camera, but I also did gripping and gaffing for all that stuff. And we would be, and servicing all the cameras. And it's, so basically 3 jobs for the price of 1.
So did you move out to LA with other people from Iowa or did you just...
I had some friends, but I came by myself. I lived in Chicago for 3 years after college. And then after that, I ended up, I had friends that were like, listen, you can stay on our couch for as long as you need to if you come out to LA. And I was like, sounds good to me. And at the time, like, it was obvious that trying to make film in Chicago was very, very hard. It was hard to get any set experience because, like I said, Columbia was the preeminent, like, production school in Chicagoland area. And so they had a pipeline to get those kids in on set. And so like, you're like trying to fight these like, to get just a foot in the door with that stuff. And you're fighting against all these like, Columbia kids that are just like getting brought on left and right. And so it was so hard to do anything. And I made a tiny little project out there by myself. And then after that, I was like, I got to move to LA or New York and do something because I cannot make it happen here. And then friends were like, come on out to LA. You can stay on our couch or whatever. And so I bought a car and whatever didn't fit, I got rid of. And then I just drove out to LA.
Was your career goal to work in production?
Yeah, I 100% wanted to write and direct movies.
Okay.
That had been the goal since basically like 1998. And I figured I just had to like eat and sleep movies to make that happen. And if I didn't, I felt like there was because I was like, I have no connections, no family or friends really that could give me a leg up. And so I just figured you just had to work super hard to make it happen. Some dude from I grew up in Iowa. And so it's just some kid from Iowa. I was like, I don't know how the hell they're going to let me make anything unless I make it myself. And that's pretty much what happened. But the thing was, I came out and I had some friends from Iowa from film school. and then they had already made friends with everybody for like a couple of years prior, and then I joined into the community, and the next thing you know, you're working on people's projects and whatever, and then you got a day job, working on whatever you can get your hands on. I ended up doing camera stuff with reality work as a day job for a while. The pay's good,
Yeah.
The morale depends on what you're working on. The morale can be pretty bad, though, depending on whatever project you're working on.
What kind of reality show did you work on?
I mean, I worked on The Hills for like a day or two. I worked on Millionaire Matchmaker for like 3 seasons. I worked on The Bachelor for a season. I worked on there's for Animal Planet. They have a show called Pit Boss. They had a show called Pit Boss, and it was little people who rescued pit bulls. And I remember hearing the pitch and being like, I don't know what this is. This going to be exploitative? Like, what is this going to be? And so I didn't shoot the pilot, but I ended up joining when they had the green light for the whole season. And as soon as I met the cast, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, they're all cool. And you're basically just rescuing dogs, which I totally have a soft spot for dogs and pit bulls. And so it was like, well, this job kind of seems sweet. So like, it was honestly one of the best gigs I've ever had. And then after like 3 seasons of that, I think it was 3 seasons, and then they just never got renewed. And then I worked on a couple other small things, and I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just didn't have the stomach because a lot of the stuff, you work on like Millionaire Matchmaker or something, and it's just like miserable. Like, you're just like, and by the end of the season, you're like, no, like, I can't do this anymore. And so it's just for your own sanity. Like, you gotta you gotta pace that stuff out. Some shows, obviously, like every show's different, but it was very like eye-opening to me that like I was just like, I can't just keep doing this with myself.
So when you're doing something like The Bachelor, and this is one of the questions we had written down, but when you're doing something like The Bachelor, are you like living at the mansion there or whatever they're living at?
Yeah.
Or
you don't live there. That thing's shot. Who knows what they do? Is it still going?
I think it is.
But
yeah.
They have this place out in Agora Hills, and it's like the main, the bachelor pad. And it's this huge mansion. And then they have this giant like barn structure that's new. Ish. I mean, it's very like it's relatively new construction down the hill from it, like down the driveway from it, and that's like base camp. And so you've got like at the start of it, I think it's like 12 crews, which is nuts. But you've got basically, and each crew has like 3 people on it. And then as the people are eliminated, they don't need as many crews. So like by the end of the season, you've got like maybe 4, and they've got a whole tech crew. It's a whole thing. It's kind of a big operation. And then you walk up to the house and you shoot, and it's pretty intense. And then I only worked on it for like not even a whole season, because my DP that I was working with, there were 2 DPs. One of them I was ACing for, and then he actually was bowing out, which is why they had 2 DPs. So he bowed out about like halfway, 3/4 of the way through. And then so I took off with him. And I'm kind of glad that it worked out that way, because it was just it's a long process. And that show's pretty intense. And there were people that have been doing it for seasons and seasons. And I was just like, that's intense.
Yeah. I mean, were you following somebody around the whole time?
It would change. You would basically you would follow the stuff around in the house. And then each episode is sort of structured the same. So you would have like date nights. And so you go off location to somewhere else, do the date, shoot the date or whatever, and then you'd come back, and then like there would always be the rose ceremonies, and then so those would be kind of crazy nights, and you would like be shooting until like 7 a.m. or something like that to wrap up the interviews and stuff, and so like, and then you'd be driving back home at like reverse rush hour or whatever, and it'd just be like you're just like trying to stay awake. Anyway, it was just miserable.
So not as much fun as it sounds.
So strange too, because I've never seen any of the stuff I've worked on, because I'm not really a reality show guy.
Yeah.
But the pay, I mean, it's kind of fun, especially at the beginning, and the pay's decent, and and you're like, all right, well, I'll work on this for a couple months, and then I have downtime, and then I'll work on my own film projects in the downtime, and that's kind of how it would work.
Okay. So was that okay? So you also worked as a production assistant on a talk show. Was that before? Or after?
Yeah, I was a PA on 2 of them. I was on the David Spade Showbiz show, and then I worked on Spike Feresten talk show.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people didn't know Spike Feresten.
Had a talk show.
He's what's that?
Had a talk show. I didn't know he had one.
Yeah. He was a nice enough dude. He was a writer, I think, on The Simpsons. Maybe he was definitely a writer, and had gotten his had really cut his teeth doing that, and then had a show at like the latest hours, like on after like Mad TV on Saturday nights or something crazy like that. and that's when the show would come up, and it was a lot of the same production crew behind David Spade's Showbiz show, so that's kind of how I ended up jumping on that one. And then the writer's strike happened, and then nobody had a job anymore. So like all of us were just sort of like we're just kind of out. And then I had to pay rent, and that's how I ended up getting onto camera crew stuff for reality shows.
Okay. You also worked on a handful of other projects. What was there a difference between writing for film and for TV?
I mean, I've never really written. I've written scripts for TV, but nothing has ever been produced. All the stuff, most of the stuff I've written has been for film. And I mean, there is a difference for sure, mostly just in terms of length and breaking it down that way. And also like obviously episodic versus like, just a standalone feature. I think I probably prefer I've never worked a writer's room. And so I've only really written either with a writing partner and writing and directing partner, Dallas Hallam, or by myself.
Yeah, I know she had a co-director. How did that work out, or is this?
It was kind of an interesting, weird, I mean, it's another thing when you do work on these projects by yourself, it just kind of comes together as it comes together. But so I wrote and directed a real small zombie feature in 2008 called Diner. Full title is Diner, get it? And then we ended up, my friend Dallas came on the thing was so like ad hoc and low budget that we didn't even have a first AD, which is nuts. But he was like, hey, listen, this is like the week before. He was like, I'm going to do this first AD job over in New York. And it was his first time ever doing that. And he was like, I kind of need some experience. So I was thinking I would come on and be your first AD for the shoot. And I mean, the shoot was like 8 nights or something crazy small. Like we shot a feature in I think we had 1 pickup night. So it was like 9 nights we made a movie. Anyway, so Dallas came on and was my AD he was my first assistant director for the shoot, which is nuts. And then I was going to return the favor for his project, and that thing ended up falling apart. And out of the ashes of that, both of us, he really wanted to make a movie, but the parameters had changed. He only had like less money than we wanted to, ideally to make something. And that ended up becoming this project called Entrance. And then he was like, listen, I have this window, and I can spend this money in this window. And after this time is gone, I can't do it anymore. I need your help. Like, will you co-write, co-direct this thing with me? And that's what that was. And that movie it was very much an experiment, but it ended up becoming like a pretty effective, interesting little movie. And we got it, we got distribution, we got it picked up, we got management off of that thing. It was definitely like an interesting project. And then after that, we had both worked on it. So all of a sudden we're now like a director team, and we got management as a director team. So then out of that, like we took meetings, and our management got us basically a meeting with this company that was going to make a sequel to the movie called The Pact. And then they were like, we're going to make a Pact 2, regardless, we're going to make it. Would you guys like to write and direct this thing? We're like, okay, because anytime you get a chance to practice on somebody else's dime, that's kind of how you do that. And so we did, and the movie didn't turn out that great at all, but it was very educational, and that was another like co-writing, co-directing thing. So then after that, the next project that came up was this movie Southbound, And same thing. We were going to co-write and co-direct. We co-wrote it, but then at that point, Dallas has like his second child, and like he's just like, I need to earn money. I can't just like take off and go shoot a movie in the desert, and that's not going to pay anything, because it did not pay anything hardly at all. And that's basically what that life is, until you get lucky and make it big with something. And so at that point we kind of had to split, and then I just went back to directing by myself. But it was, in terms of like working, it worked pretty well. We shared the same brain in many regards, so it was not hard co-directing, and to be honest, like was very handy in many regards, because when you're moving that fast, like when we shot The Pact, it was like an 18-day shoot, and it's easier if there's less money to do something small. But when you have more money, it just becomes way more stressful, and there's just more stuff that has to happen. And because it's like the equipment all of a sudden costs way more, and like you've got more of it, right. You have more crew that needs direction for what's happening next, and like all that stuff. And so now you basically had two people that could answer questions instead of one, and it helped facilitate like a lot of that, the production. So it was fun. It was fun co-directing. I don't know if we'll ever get back to doing it together. He's since been doing stuff on his own as well. He lives over in the East Coast now, but yeah, it was definitely a fun time for working on those projects.
How big are the budgets for these things?
I mean, Pack 2 was like $400,000, and Entrance, we shot that thing for like $12,000.
Wow.
Which is awesome. Like ridiculous. Like I think Diner cost like $40,000 by the time we were done. By the time we IFC picked up Entrance, and between the E&O insurance, which are you familiar with E&O insurance? It's called Errors and Omissions.
Yeah.
And it's basically like an insurance policy you have to take out as a producer for the film you made to ensure the distributor that they're not going to get sued into oblivion, basically, for some, negligence on your part. Right. So that costs like $6,000 or something like that. And so, like, if you made a movie for like $12,000, you're like, that's like half the budget, which is ridiculous. But I mean, it's like that's what that is, and I'm sure it costs way more for bigger movies and stuff. But but between that and like music licensing, I think we broke even for what IFC gave us. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover, like, we didn't have to, we weren't, like, in debt. With Diner, we were in debt after we made that and got it distributed. Oh. Because we had to pay in errors and omissions just out of our own pocket. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they fronted us hardly anything for that. Anyway, but, like, Southbound was, like, $300,000 maybe.
What's the biggest budget you've had?
Pack 2 is probably the biggest budget. But I feel like, I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't look like it. I feel like Southbound probably has the biggest bang for its buck. Southbound turned out great. I was very proud of that movie. I'm very proud of like all of them except for the Pack 2, to be honest. But Southbound was very much like, we put pretty much, almost nobody took any money out of that. We just put it into the movie. And then we went out to, Palmdale and Lancaster and all that, and shot that thing, and like 29 Palms, and then finally like got it into Toronto International Film Fest, and then after that, MPI was the producer on that, so they put up the money, and they ended up getting it sold, and it went off and had a life. All right. Which is cool. I mean, the people that worked on it also have gone on to do awesome stuff. Roxanne Benjamin's been doing Pretty Little Liars, and Dave Bruckner has been killing it with Hellraiser was the most recent, but then also The Ritual, and then of course Radio Silence guys have gone on to do Ready or Not and Scream movies and everything. So pretty cool. It was fun. I didn't know any of them before it, and then when we got asked to join on because we made Entrance. They were, super welcoming, and it was really fun.
Your credits seem to lean towards horror. Is that?
Oh yeah.
Because you love the genre.
I do love it. It's once you're in the community, it's very hard to leave it, I guess, or like it's not hard to leave it, but like you kind of want to stay in it, I guess is the best way to put it. Like it's relatively small out here in LA, and everybody's really nice. Like a lot of the nicest people I know make some of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. So like, it's just kind of how it happens. And so as a result, like you just kind of want to keep making more stuff and working with these people that you get to know, It's definitely my preferred genre, although I do love, like, I'm a big film buff in general, and I love all genres for sure. And I would like to make stuff. I still would love to do live action stuff that was like direct and write for other genres as well. But it's the thing of it is like and again, I don't even know what it's like making movies right now because I haven't done anything since 2015, and everything's way different now. And in addition to that, getting budgets and everything is just like it was never easy, but now it just seems even more bizarre. And I would say this, like if I was going to make something again, it would probably be horror because low budgets are very forgiving. The audiences are super forgiving. Like as long as you're making, like if you make an effective horror film, like they don't care if it's how much it cost. And it plays like worldwide. Because like comedy plays for like a country or something, you know what I mean? Like it's so hard to have comedy translate over, different cultures. But like horror, like 9 times out of 10, wherever you play that horror film, like it's probably gonna do what it does and be effective.
Do you have any favorite horror films?
A ton. A ton. I mean, like, I don't. It's hard to. The list is quite long. I mean, they're definitely like all the big ones that you would imagine, probably those. But then also, I'm a big fan of like Italian horror and foreign horror stuff. But like, I was a huge like fan of like Dario Argento's Suspiria and Lucio Fulci stuff and like Zombie, also called Zombie 2. And then, and also like, if you're familiar with Cemetery Man or The Stage Fright, those are both from, I don't even know how you say it, if it's Michele Soavi or if it's Michelle Soavi. Anyway, terrific director, though. Also did The Church. Anyway, and then there's this, here's one. Big fan of this film called Anguish, which a lot of folks, it's harder to find. But if you can find it, it's Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist, and Michael Lerner plays her son, and he works as an orderly at a hospital, and she hypnotizes him to steal eyeballs, and it's like it's the most bonkers, awesome film. And what's nuts about it is that like you're almost like halfway through the movie, and then the movie does this move where it's like, oh, you thought you were watching this kind of movie, but I'm going to take a step back, and it's actually this kind of movie. And I won't even tell you what it is. It's so cool. If you can see it in a movie theater, it's the best way to see it. And I very much mean that because it's very specifically the movie theater plays into it. But if you can even just catch it somehow like on streaming or something, like please watch it. It's so strange. And weird and fun, and it's beautiful and gross. It's great. Anguish. It's Spanish director, I believe, but it's all in
Spanish.
Oh, it's all in English.
So since we're talking about horror, how did you get into comics?
So it is a weird. It's a weird transition for me, just in terms of I think publicly because I just popped up out of nowhere for a lot of folks. But I drew ever since I was a kid. And then, since I was like 4 or 5, it would make like little simple comics, even that early. And throughout high school, it was basically up until I started film school. At that point, I stopped drawing, except for like maybe storyboard stuff.
Right.
And then I would just focus on filmmaking. And so it was honestly like a little over a decade before I started drawing again. And then after we made Entrance, there's always like I mean, this happens with any project, but like it was just kind of there's like a letdown. It's just like a post-project depression, which isn't like super heavy, but you're just kind of like, nah, it's over now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, you're happy it's over, but it's kind of bittersweet.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't know what to do with yourself. And so I was in that sort of funk after entrance, and I was like, I want to do something, but I don't want to spend another year like making it. I just want to like come up with an idea and finish it within like an hour. And I was like, I should draw again. And so I started drawing and watercoloring. And then, maybe like a month or two into that, I was just getting this huge appetite for it. I was like drawing every day, like a ton. And then, and I was like, I should really think, if I can get better at this, I should think about doing comics. Because I love, telling stories, and it's a very great medium for telling stories. And with a low threshold, and if you have a DIY mentality, then you can just make your comics and put them out there. And I was like, yes, like, why I should do that. And then I had this sort of pie in the sky idea of like, if I could get comics going, then I could work on books in between feature projects, because it takes forever to get features going. And so I was like, yeah, in the downtime in between features, I'll be working on comics, and then I can work on a film, and I can work on comics. And I don't think that'll ever happen realistically, because it's so I'm just like almost underwater with working on comics. I was like, I don't know how anybody would have time to do that, but that was the idea. So I started just kind of, probably like 4 years into that, I think I was starting to put out my own stuff that I would sell like as zine pop-ups and stuff. And then, so this is like around 2013 or 14. And then Josh Trujillo, the writer, ended up, I think I found him on Craigslist, and he was looking for an artist for his self-published anthology series called Love Machines. And he also was in LA, and he was thrilled to meet another artist that actually lived in the same town that he did. So he hired me to do it for. He actually paid money for the pages, which was nuts. Because I didn't expect that. I was hoping, and then that was the first thing I'd ever done for just anybody, for comics, even though it was self-published. And then it was like just drawing and drawing and drawing. And W. Maxwell Prince, who's the writer for Ice Cream Man, and several other awesome books, he started following me on Instagram and liked my work. And then he asked if I would like to do a cover, like a B variant for Ice Cream Man. And I was like, oh, yes, that would be awesome. And then that turned into me drawing a whole issue for his anthology called Ha Ha, which is all sad clown stories. And he basically wrote it to my strengths after I said I would love to do that. And then, so that was my first issue, and that came out from Image, and that was incredible. And it was a really good experience. And then a little bit after that, my work had been shown to Mark Doyle. So now we're up to like 2021. And Mark Doyle was at the time director of editorial for IDW, and they were doing their creator-owned stuff, and looking for new projects. And Paul Davison, who was in 2015 was with The Orchard, who put out Southbound. And then now in 2021 or whatever, he was at IDW with their film TV development. And then he showed my stuff to Mark Doyle from Instagram or something. He was like he's like, hey, he's a writer too. He can write and he can draw. And so Mark Doyle was like, oh, let me know if he wants to hop on a call. And I was like, sure, yes, okay, I would like that. And so that's how I ended up talking to him. And then he's like, well, if you got any ideas, I mean, like, pitch them our way. I gave him 4, and Beneath the Trees was one of them.
All right.
And that's how weirdly that happened.
So, sorry. Do you think there are any writers or artists that have influenced your own work?
Oh, yes. Early on, I was hugely inspired by Jean Giraud, like Mobius. His work just blew me away. It was I was a big fan of that Claire line style that a lot of the that Jean Giraud was so a master of, and a bunch of there's obviously like it's a big French school of illustrators, that clear line style, and there was something about it being so like it just felt like a ton of energy in it, but also like it was delicate and it handled the watercolor really well, and I was like very much into that. Like I love the idea of doing watercolor, so he was like one of the first ones that I had focused on. And then I started getting more into like I wanted to venture away from just like maybe thin pen line work, and I started getting into brushing. And then I was like, I forget how exactly I found Alex Toth, but eventually I found Alex Toth, and I was like, this is incredible. Like this is blowing my mind. And then I started getting into Jorge Zafino, if you're familiar with him. He was like, I think he's Argentinian, and he was like a Marvel artist for quite a while. And even his son also sort of carried the torch. Incredibly expressive and strong line work. It's so incredible. And brush, a lot of brush. And then also, was it Alberto Breccia, who's like the dude that did Mort Cinder? Are you familiar with Mort Cinder? It's another horror comic, and he was the artist on that. And it's like it's just basically like I was getting really drawn to that expressive side of it, of the line work and stuff. And I was like, I need to explore this more. I need to develop this more. And that's kind of where I sort of got pulled towards. And so it was very much like it was like it started off very clean and delicate. The further along I went, I just kept getting messier and messier, in an interesting way. And then just pouring over stuff from like Bill Sienkiewicz, and like just really being enamored with a lot of artists whose work is so, it's very evocative and interesting in terms of it's a lot of traditional artists I think I'm gravitating towards. And most recently, like there's a cartoonist out of Italy named Manuele Fior, and he is like my favorite right now, I think. He works primarily in gouache, which is nuts. And he has a very like deceptively simple style, but it's actually very like his color theory is incredible. Like he's just kind of got, he's got all that down, but he has a super interesting mode of storytelling with his layouts that like it's I don't there's something about it that's like very just thoughtful and interesting, and at the same time like I don't know, it manages to handle all this emotion that it wasn't even like, I feel like I'm lacking every time I read his stuff, and I'm like, oh, I gotta be better. Like look at what Manuele's doing. But anyway, so it's always a treat whenever he has new stuff coming out. I'm a big fan of his.
Do you think your experience in TV and film influenced your approach to comics?
Yes, I think that the way that I digest like the process of making comics is very much through like imagining like department heads in my head. So there's like, there's like the production designer, and I'm thinking of what the world looks like, what's the set's gonna be like. And I think about the lighting, so I'm like a gaffer now, and I'm thinking every time I'm sizing up a shot, I'm a cinematographer, and I'm like figuring out like what's the story we're telling visually, how do we do that effectively, and whenever I'm drawing faces, I'm acting, you know what I mean, or you're a director, you're kind of both in that sense, and like and I'm wardrobe when I'm dressing them, and I'm props when I'm giving them stuff to handle, and I'm like thinking about why this prop, why not that prop, you know what I mean, like all that stuff. Like in my head, I can't divorce that stuff. And it's also kind of makes it easy. It's very daunting. You guys know, you've made a bunch of comics, so like when you make anything, there's just so many decisions to be made about everything. And so to me, it was a lot less intimidating to split it up like that in my head. And so, and it felt like I had a team behind me. Sort of a split personality way, I guess. and it just, I always call it like eating the elephant. Like, how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time.
Yeah.
It's just such a huge task, but you get through it, and that's. So I guess that's how I eat the elephant.
So, how did you come up with the idea for Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees?
I was so go back to like, well, so I started drawing every day, right? It was around like 2011 or something, and around 2017, I was just drawing, and I also used to smoke. And so when I quit smoking, I used to, instead of smoking in the morning with a cup of coffee, I just would draw in the morning with coffee, and that kind of became the new routine. And so it was one of these mornings, and I think I looked back through my postings on social media stuff, and I found it was in 2017, and I drew this anthropomorphic bear walking down a hillside or whatever with a bloody axe over their shoulder, and like they were wearing overalls, and the design is different than Samantha in the book, but it was very much like sort of I drew it. I was just sort of looking at it, and I was like, well, it'd be interesting if like there was, some sort of animal person town like in children's books. And for me, Richard Scarry, who's a children's book author, who's famous for creating Busy Town, was that was like a big part of my youth. So, so I was like, what if there's a serial killer in Busy Town? It's 100% what I just thought. And it happened to be a bear that I drew. And so I also was. I'd always thought the lyrics from the song Teddy Bear's Picnic were sort of sinister because I think it's like the second chorus, but it goes, beneath the trees where nobody sees, they hide and seek as long as they please. And so I was like, what do they do beneath the trees that nobody sees? I was probably like, I was definitely a teenager. That song showed up on a compilation album that would show up on, like 2 a.m. on Comedy Central or something. And then you would see like, it would run through all the songs. That was one of them. That was the line that would play for that part,
Yeah.
And I just like immediately had to be like, oh, I'm sure it's like they're doing something horrible. Like, whatever. And so as soon as I drew this bear and I thought about a serial killer in Busy Town, and I was like, it'd be called Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, because it was this bear I was looking at. And in that moment, like all that stuff came together. Like the more I thought about it, the more I was like, it'd be interesting if there was like 2 serial killers and it was causing problems for the first serial killer. And then the whole book became it took a killer to catch a killer. Like that's what it would be. And then I was like, and it would all play out in this innocent town. And the like the ramifications would be horrible. Like that was all in that sort of moment was where it came together. I didn't think anything more about it other than that, but I put that down in I have a pitch folder of just whatever idea. Anytime I have an idea like that, I'll just put it however many like sentences or whatever it is, and then I'll usually just leave it unless I'm really compelled to work on it more. But but that's what that was when I pitched it. I fleshed it out in terms of kind of what the broad strokes of like a 3-act structure would be for it, but it wasn't much more than that initial idea. And then once IDW was into it, that's when I fleshed it out to be the thing that it is.
One question I have here is how it felt writing about a serial killer, and did you ever find that at any point your character's actions deviated from your original plan?
So this is like the third story that I've been a part of telling that included a serial killer. So I feel like it's, or at least like a psychopath in some sense. So like it's very like, I just keep coming back to this. I guess I'm very fascinated with it. To me, a lot of like storytelling, my inroad is like the existential angle. So with specifically Beneath the Trees, it was, well, what if life as you know it is just upended? And so if I'm a serial killer, like, what would that be like? It was like, okay, well, all of a sudden, like, there's another killer on the scene and they're bringing a lot of unwanted attention. So like that would, but the idea of being able to have a universal, like, well, I think everybody knows what it feels like to have the rug pulled out from under them in some regard, and especially like right after COVID hit, like that was sort of the vibe. So like, I was feeling that pretty heavy in 2021 when I was putting the pitch together. And the story itself, like, it was a challenge to make the killer be the main character for such a long, like, an episodic thing that was new to me. Obviously, Dexter was a huge touchstone for folks when we were pitching it. But, like, I've only seen the one episode, like the first episode.
Right.
And I specifically stopped watching it because I did not want to have anything become off limits to me because I thought it might be too close or something. I just didn't want to know.
Yeah.
I didn't want to know anything. And so the one thing I did know is that he killed bad people. And then I knew that I wanted that to be different. I wanted it to be very random, and she kills innocent people that aren't deserving. And it, you know, I liked that idea, but it made it more problematic. But it was like, and I was like, how are you going to make this problematic character somebody that people are going to root for? And then it turned into a, you know, like a lawful evil versus like chaotic evil thing.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, if there's rules and you see, and she's trying to stabilize something, like maybe that'll be the thing people want to get, you know, behind. It kind of works. It seems, I mean, it works for me, but it's been kind of interesting. And it was pretty much exactly as I had planned. Like I didn't change anything. When I first wrote out the big outline with everything in it, I knew it was going to get really dark, and I 100% wanted to make it that way. So I was very upfront with IDW from the beginning, and they were supportive all the way. Maggie Howell was my main editor on that first run, and she was like, the only notes I got were to make it better. Really like key notes on amping up like the sweetness at the beginning of issue 1, and like making sure that we're hitting like the characters that we're going to need to for planting seeds later on, and things like that. Like I was very much again, it's my first comic that I've ever really had published, so it was I leaned on them for stuff like that. But it was no pushback whatsoever for any of the gnarly stuff.
Was there anything you couldn't include for one reason or another?
No, I got everything I wanted in. It was, and I feel like it. I don't know. I was trying to think of like stuff that would be too far. Listen, it ends like so dark.
Yeah.
That I thought that was gonna be the thing. They were like, we can't do that. And so I was pretty, excited that they were into it, as it was. But I would think I was trying to think like, there's something about the violence in it that feels like it's, I didn't want it to be exploitative in the sense that it was like a throwaway thing. Like all the violence has consequences, and there's funerals in the book, and like the community's grieving. You see other characters grieve. Like that was all very important to me. And I think because of that, you're giving like reverence to the death that happens. And as a result, like I feel like it earns its way into the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely stuff that's not like that I've read and have enjoyed in certain regards. But like, for me, I have to like be able to invest in it. And so the violence has to kind of, it sort of has to fit the bill.
One question we have here is, did you have a favorite character to write and or draw?
Yeah. I had a really good time writing Cherry Gherkins, who's the pig that shows up in issue 2. And she was like she's like such a force that like I regretted what happened to her. I kind of realized that like like by the time you're in the middle of drawing this stuff, you guys know, like the ship has sailed. Yeah. Like the story is the story. Like you're not going to be changing it in the middle of a page to suit whatever, because there's ramifications that come down the line, and you can't mess it up at that point. And so, I mean, you can with some tweaks, but like big stuff like that, you can't. So like her fate was sealed. But I realized that like there was such a missed opportunity for a redemption arc with Cherry Gherkins that like I don't even know what that would have been. But like I just really enjoyed writing her and having a lot of fun with it. And I was like, there was so much more that was like we left on the table with that. It was just lessons learned for later, for a different story or a different book. But I really had a lot of fun writing for her. And then drawing, I think I enjoyed drawing Birdie the turtle the best because I just love the idea of the shell and everything that goes along with it. And he's very much so the characters, like I choose some of the animals based on to kind of go against stereotype or to go along with stereotype, and he's very much a going along with stereotype guy. He's like very like he's an introvert, and he's traumatized, obviously. So like it's kind of a double whammy for Birdie. There's something, I don't know, there's something really cute about it. It's funny because like I have a lot of fun with the cuteness of everything, even though it gets very dark and upsetting. But it's all sort of that's the fun for me.
Before we get into the sequel story, I just wanted to say when I first saw this cover, I found it to be like a very striking image, and that like
thanks.
That like immediately intrigued me to read it.
Oh, cool.
Yes, it was kind of like when I read Stray Dogs for the first time.
Oh, sure. Like a lot of the crossover with like the Venn diagram of fans of Stray Dogs and Beneath the Trees is almost a complete circle. It's like it was very much a new to me. I hadn't read Stray Dogs until this came out, and then I had tabled at WonderCon, and I happened to be right. Like at that point, I'd done a couple signings. I was still like knee deep in finishing up that first volume of Beneath the Trees, though, so I didn't have a lot of time to go anywhere else. And so I tabled at WonderCon right next to Tony, and then so we talked like the whole con. And that guy's like a major sweetheart, as you guys know.
Yeah.
He's so generous with his advice and just very transparent about about his experience with making comics. And so that was incredible. But at that point, like I'd already heard, like even before we met, like I'd heard from people like, "Oh, you haven't read Stray? Like you have to read Stray Dogs. Like you're gonna love it. Like if you made this, you'll love it." I was like, "Okay," and it's true. And then we ended up doing a panel at C2E2, I think, where we were talking about cozy horror and the stuff that we do. It was very much like that cover was very much the thing I knew it was going to be following the book around forever. And so I wanted it to be something that was interesting enough that would catch your attention and maybe be like, you wouldn't quite understand what it was until you looked at it like for a little bit longer than a glance.
Yeah.
And I actually drew that thing and then painted it. I was halfway through and I scrapped it and I redid the whole thing to what that is. I was doing a really shitty job. It was just not, the paint was not working.
Yeah.
And it worked out much, much better the second go around.
You gotta make sure you got a good first impression.
You really do. It's worth it. It's worth the extra effort.
So, as you mentioned before, you're set to release Rite of Spring. What was it like going back to that world?
So, it was interesting because by the time I did like issue 3 of the first volume of Beneath the Trees, I pretty much knew like what I would want to do if I got the chance to do more. And I'm like, bit of advice for anybody, if you get a chance to do a book with the publisher and it's like a limited 4 or 6 issue thing, like I very much like had this thing in my head where I was like, well, I want to like sew it up, but I also want to leave it open enough to be able to do more if you can, because why not? And if you don't, then you have like your ending that's like satisfying enough. And but if you get to do more, then awesome. And so by the time I did like issue 3, which involves like a funeral and it's Samantha's actually acknowledging like the impact she has on the families of the people that she basically disappears.
Yeah.
And so I was immediately like, oh, like a second book would focus on a surviving family member of somebody that disappeared. And at that, I mean, and it's very obvious from the first issue, like the Duck is such a prominent character. I was like, why not? It could be the Duck. It could be like a family member of the Duck, and we're watching, the way that it's, this Duck's disappearance, like his death in absentia, has affected this, his sister is who it is. And then I also had the idea to set it forward like 8 years later, because I really wanted, for multiple reasons. One of them, I really wanted to see what 8 years of like torture would be for a person that was wrestling with that, and just how it would just like twist them, And then you also have the added bonus of just like so much stuff can happen in that huge chunk of time. I think I was very inspired by the time jump that happens in Battlestar Galactica, if anybody's familiar with that. They do this crazy long time jump in the middle of that run, and it was just like so interesting to me what that allowed, and so that was part of the inspiration for that. But so when issue 1 came out, so like I think I started working on it basically like around February of 2023. And it came out October 2023. And at that point, I'm on like issue 4 or something like that. So I've already had like the idea of like, oh, if I get to do another thing, then whatever. And it came out, and it had way bigger response than I was expecting at all. But IDW, after issue 1 came out, they're like, you want to do more? I would like to do more. Here's my pitch. And they were like, oh yeah, awesome. Great, let's do it. And so at that point, so like October 2023, like I knew we were going to be doing this. And it just, just took a while to get to this point.
Yeah, we read the Free Comic Book Day
Oh, awesome.
version. And I already want to see how it plays out.
Cool, yeah.
Is there any... Sorry, when you were doing Rite of Spring, did you happen to come up with any more, or were you waiting for like a third volume, or were you waiting for inspiration?
For something that's going to follow up?
Yeah.
I mean, like, listen, I have lots of ideas, and I would enjoy doing as many as I can, but I have no idea how this is going to go. I mean, I feel like so far it's very promising. And I have like, I definitely have more ideas for additional stuff. We'll see how long it'll go on. It's also like I'm trying to find a balance in my life right now of how I make this and also have a life.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure that out. Which is that's everybody's problem that makes comics. And so that's all part of it. But hopefully, fingers crossed. I really hope that this thing can enjoy the amount of success like that first one had, and I get to do more. I definitely have stories for it if I do.
Question just came to me. Do you find it easier to draw animals or people?
Ooh. Honestly, like people, but the animals are so fun. The weird thing about people is that, the weird thing about animals is that there's so much more decision making that's involved. Of like, what kind of animal is it? Like, what does it mean? What is this character doing in this scene? Like, if it's a new character, right?
Right.
And then or like crowd scenes are kind of like, I was like, who needs to be here in this moment? And like, can there be like a, like, are there insects? I don't think so, but maybe. And then like, and you keep thinking like, and then you're like, well, are we like gonna do regional? Because it takes place in Vermont, but it's like slightly skewed. If you pay attention to the calendar and you compare it to our calendar, it's off by like a day. On purpose. And so it's like an alternate universe, United States or whatever. And then you start thinking about like the different animals that live there. And then you think about like migration, like people migrating, and they're like, where'd they come from? Who would end up in Vermont in the 1980s and like, or whatever. And now I'm in the 90s. So I'm like in the 1990s, like who would end up there and where would they have come from? What, you know what I mean? There's like so much, which should be, for any character, whatever. But like, for some reason, when I'm doing people, it's not, there's a lot more defining features for animals. So you're like, there's just like way more to figure out. I've noticed like crowd scenes kill me. They're fun. I love drawing the animal people, but like, it's just like, there's more to it.
Yeah. Did you have any ideas for non-horror comics?
Boy, that's a good question. Yes, I do have ideas for non-horror comics. Free for All isn't necessarily a horror comic. I feel like it's more in line with like an action type. To me, it was like a Paul Verhoeven movie.
Right.
Which I mean, like RoboCop, I wouldn't call horror. It is very gruesome.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not like The Exorcist. So I feel like
not The Exorcist, you're right.
so I feel like yeah. So yeah, I guess that's like a non-horror thing. But I do have other ideas for other comics that aren't horror, but most of them are. I'm realizing that like right now, I mean, my thing is I've been doing horror for like decades at this point. It comes very easily to me. But I also would love to do other stuff. It's just that it's like I'm just trying. I'm thinking while I'm talking. Apologies, but I'm thinking through like recent pitches and stuff, and a lot of it's like, nope, that's all horror. So like it's just kind of funny how it's just kind of that becomes your thing. It is. It's one of those things though where it's like right now I'm like horror, and I've definitely done like between the Creepshow short and then I did a short for the DC horror with Adam Strange that came out in December, and Free for All. And I'm happy to have comics that aren't animal people. Because I don't necessarily want to become the animal person guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I might just be the animal person guy, and that's okay. It served me well, and that's fine. But I don't know that I can get out of the horror thing. I might be able to get out of animal people, but I don't know if I can get out of the horror thing and still have an audience. So I don't know.
I mean, Wes Craven had music of the heart.
He did. And something else? No. Was that it?
Did you Red Violin, or am I making that up? I don't know.
No. I think Red Violin was Don McKellar.
Okay.
But I feel like I don't know why I thought Wes Craven did something. Yes, it's a thriller, but it's not. It's more of a thriller. It's called Red Eye.
Okay.
Right.
I had red in there. That was pretty good.
Yeah. It's funny when thrillers were like it was sort of like the acceptable type of horror. Like, you know what I mean? Like when Silence of the Lambs came out and they were like, it's a thriller that has some dude splayed out like a butterfly with his guts hanging out. You're like, but it's a thriller. He's like, is it? Is that a thriller? The thinking person's horror movie. Anyway, I love all kinds, so that's fine. But yeah, I think I guess that would be But I mean, like, there's nothing like music from the heart. I mean, that's like obviously way different. Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah. So since you do watercolor, that means you persist in analog.
Yeah, I feel like I'm using gouache but I treat it almost all like watercolor. But it has a certain opacity to it that you can lay it on real thick. And then I'll also use like either acrylic gouache or just regular acrylics to also add that opacity to paint over to fix stuff. I'm realizing that like this goes back to like why I like Manuel Fiore so much. He does all gouache, but like he fixes stuff on the page. And I'm realizing that it's a lot easier for me to fix stuff on the page instead of doing it in Photoshop later.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to listen. If I just inked it and then somebody colored it on Photoshop, which is how I did Free for All, colored that all in Photoshop. Fixing that is a lot easier on the computer, and I would do it that way. But when I'm doing it traditional, it's definitely like you're trying to mimic that traditional look with Photoshop or whatever. Actually, I use Affinity now, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just harder. I'm realizing I just need to fix it on the page and scan it in, and it'll look fine. And then afterwards, I have these pages that I still have them all, but I'm definitely going to be selling them at some point. And it's this interesting artifact of the book, which I think is kind of neat.
If you were to go back and relive your artistic career, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, let's see. There's definitely multiple things, but I feel like the big one was I wish I didn't stop drawing for so long. It was very foolish of me to think I couldn't also have this other part of me while I was pursuing film. It would have served me a lot. It would have served me much, much better if I'd continued to do, just like in college or something, like take like some life drawing classes and like other disciplines, like do sculpture. Sculpture would have helped so much, or printmaking or whatever. Definitely missed opportunities, but I feel like it's also, it's funny because like I very much did just kind of pop up out of nowhere. Because I have just sort of had the weird trajectory that I've had. And I also don't know if I think if I would have tried making comics earlier, it wouldn't have worked out this way at all. And I think I would not have, because I would have been a different person.
Yeah.
And I think even if my technique was better, I don't think my storytelling would have been a bit as good. And so it's very much like, I've been writing screenplays since like 2000 or whatever. So like 20 years of just writing has served me very well in that regard. And so it's interesting because I feel like I do feel that there was so much catching up that had to happen as I was like getting into it because I just felt so behind. I still feel like I'm so behind on everything. And we'd mentioned earlier, like when we met at LA Comic-Con, I had not been tabling that long. Like a lot of this stuff is new to me. That was my first time tabling at LA Comic-Con when we met.
Yeah.
And it was, I just feel like I'm making up for lost time. Like a lot of last year was just doing as many conventions as I could to try and meet as many people as I could. Because I just felt like I'm in my mid 40s right now. Definitely took a career change with all this. And it's interesting because like I still was doing another thing that I would have changed too is like I started storyboarding probably around like 2019 2018.
Yeah.
Like focusing more on storyboarding. And I realized like I should have been doing this shit like a decade ago. Like, I don't know why didn't I do that? Like I don't want a camera assist for a reality show. Like, the thing with like storyboarding is you're working with all these different people. You're working with different directors or cinematographers on every different project. and all of those people, they're all just people that they have their own different ways of working, and it informs you, and it's just like a wealth of like information by being able to hop onto different projects like that. I just didn't even cross my mind, and it would have enriched my drawing and whatever. Anyway, wish I would have done that earlier. And like, but at the same time, that pays really well. And there's also the fear that like you would not want to give that up. Like I was right on the edge of becoming union for storyboarding.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have given that up to do comics. Like I feel like this comic opportunity popped in at just the right moment for me to be able to be like, well, let me try this for a year and see what happens. Because it, I mean, we're talking like healthcare and like benefits. And like, I mean, like, oh, mamma mia. So like, it was, anyway, that didn't happen. Instead, I get to draw 14 hours every day. But the thing I make is mine. And as you guys know, like that's invaluable.
Yeah.
And so it's, that is very cool. So I guess I would have changed that. I take it back. I wouldn't do storyboarding. I take it back.
Is there any advice you'd give to a prospective writer or artist?
I mean, my advice is make the thing. Like, just go out and do it. The hardest thing to getting stuff out there in the world is just making it. And so if you can get into the discipline of creating stuff and putting it out there, like that's the thing. I mean, it's the exact same thing we did with movies. Like, it's the only movies that, I take it back. So, like, Pac 2 was, like, the only one that was, like, something that was just going to happen regardless. But, like, everything else wouldn't have existed if we didn't just, like, get up the gumption and go do it. And, put some stuff on some credit cards and get out there and do what it takes to get the shot and do the thing. It's very much, you got to have that love, and it's not going to pay anything forever. It's going to be decades of not paying. and then if you're lucky, something will happen. But like, you got to have that passion to do it. And the big advice I would say, okay, I have two other things.
All
One, get comfortable shoes, because it's going to serve you well. Just get like a good pair of good feeling shoes.
Yeah.
Two, find another way to sustain yourself, because it's a marathon. Like, there's no, like, it's funny. My friend called it like, it was I had with Beneath the Trees was like an overnight success that was like 10 years in the making. So it was just like a long road of just paying bills and whatever, and practicing stuff and doing things until something happened. You know what I mean? Like, there's just the way that is. So think about it that way. Don't think about like, just think about living and having a relatively healthy lifestyle, because you're gonna need your body for the years to come. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta take care of yourself and just try not to burn yourself out just getting to the start line.
Something I just thought of was, since you do watercolor, do you have any recommendations for watercolor artists?
Yes. So like, I mean, there's affordable stuff out there. I'm like, the most recent find I've had, like, if you're a Hayao Miyazaki fan, he's a big, lover of Holbein watercolor. Holbein does gouache and watercolor. They're Japanese. It's a German name, but it's a Japanese company. And they're all their watercolors are great. You can get a nice like pad of that, and you'll be good to go. I've got with gouache. I work with Holbein, but I've also recently just discovered this stuff through Yasutomo, they're located out in Torrance. For anybody in the Southern California area, which I only mentioned because, like, I mean, anybody across the U.S., like, go ahead and order from them. But they have that you can order and get it in like 2 days or something. It's great. But they have a ton of awesome Chinese and Japanese brushes and like calligraphy brushes, which are great for watercolor. Tons of awesome like utensils and stuff in the ceramic dishes and things like that, palettes, everything like that. But they also have this. They have this gouache. I think the brand is Niji, like Niji,
Yeah.
and it's gouache that comes in these little pots, but it's like $30 for like a full set, which is like maybe like 12 like couple ounce pots of these colors, and it's pretty much all you need, and it's like $30, and it's like, and if you start looking at gouache and stuff, like it's like $8 a tube normally for stuff. So like it's such a good deal. I got it. I was like $30. I'll try it out, whatever. And it's so good. I'm in love with it. So like, it doesn't have like quite all the colors that I want. So I do kind of supplement it with some other stuff. But like that's my check out Yasutomo if you're getting into traditional stuff. Like they also, if you're just inking, get their they have an incredible Sumi ink that's waterproof. It's the green bottle. And it's all natural. Like Sumi ink is from soot, that's sort of put into the bar, and they turn it into the ink with water. But they treat it with shellac, which is natural, to make it waterproof for the stuff in the green thing. So I ink everything first, and then I'll erase all my pencil work, and then I paint over that, and it won't run because it's all it's that waterproof ink. Anyway, they're great. Yasutomo, check them out.
You get a cut if people know.
You know what? I should. They're just so nice that I just feel happy to share them. I don't know how they. I mean, like obviously people buy stuff from them because they're still been around for quite a while. But I've never heard anybody else talk about them.
Do you have any hobbies outside of comics?
I mean, I do. I have a lot of. I haven't been able to do anything since I started working on this, but I love making music. I play guitar and drums and a little bit of clarinet, some piano, and I like making and recording music. I haven't been able to do that for a long time though, and also like I would love to get into making video games. I feel like that would be fascinating. I also love animating, which is kind of part of what I do anyway, but it's not obviously, like it's something separate, but I love doing that. And then I also love photography and having a chance to roam around. I've got like a little Holga and then a regular digital, and then I have like a Nikon FE2. I like just going around shooting whenever I can, and other stuff. But I just don't have any time. Like watching movies and reading, and I haven't been able to feed my head for such a long time, so I haven't had any time outside of like audiobooks. Audiobooks are good if you're inking, and you can do that.
So one question we ask all of our guests is, have you ever read Power Squared?
I have. I don't have a copy of them, but I've checked out issue 1 through your read along that you did on YouTube. Because I was like, I got to check out. I want to see something. And so I was going through your site and everything, but then I found the read along. So I went when you two were on there going through it. So I read the first issue that way.
Okay, it's an audiobook.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see it though. You go through it page by page.
Okay.
But you do both though. It was very cool of you to do it for everybody listening along too. Though I appreciate that.
And if people wanted to follow you on social media, what's the best way?
So you can find me on Instagram at CatBirdPlanet, which I've had that account for a while. And then on Bluesky, you can find me at Patrick Horvath. If you go to also just patrickhorvath.com, you can find me, and then check out whatever stuff I've got. I've got a newsletter on there, and then I have social media stuff on there. And it's probably the easiest way. You can also just email me straight through patrickhorvath.com. Best way to keep in touch. I don't update the page as much as I want because I still haven't had any time, but it's easiest way to get in touch with me.
Okay.
If you're looking for a silent fidget toy, use our affiliate code Martin Eli to save 10% off your purchase at getono.com. Right, and if you're watching this on YouTube later and you like this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment below if you have read Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
All right. So until next, thanks very much for being on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, it was great. And so until next time, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins. I'm Trevor Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared. Bye.